I was able to make a full recovery. I don't meet the criteria for any of these conditions anymore. People are literally told this, that, it's not recoverable or that there's a small chance of recovery. But if we look at the actual data, of course, people aren't recovering, right? If healthcare providers aren't trained in this.
When you've been stuck in survival mode for so long that just barely functioning feels like a full-time job, it's easy to forget that recovery isn't just possible, it can actually be mapped. And my guest today knows that firsthand. And she's one of the treasured few who bring both clinical expertise and lived experience to the table. If you're new here, I'm Raelan Agle, and this is where we dive into raw, real stories and insights from people who've recovered from conditions like CFS, Long Covid, fibromyalgia, and more. After over 230 interviews here and counting, one thing is clear. Recovery isn't about pushing through. It's about learning to work with your body and with your brain. And today I'm joined by the incredible Zara Dureno, tuning in from British Columbia, from in my home country of Canada. Zara is a trained occupational therapist, a clinical hypnotherapist, and a neurocoach who supports clients dealing with chronic illness, pain, and post-concussion symptoms. But before she started helping others, she spent a full decade navigating fibromyalgia, CFS, and multiple concussions herself. And her recovery came through a mix of science-backed tools and deep inner work. And now she's here to share what actually helped her move beyond survival mode and back into her vibrant life. So please join me in welcoming Zara. Zara, amazing to have you here. Thank you for doing this.
I'm so excited to be here. This is great.
So many great things to get into. And I know you do incredible work helping so many people facing all of these conditions where there is so little help and resources available out there. And it was started with your own journey with this. Mm-hmm. So tell us about that.
Yeah. So my journey started when I was 13 and I was cantering with a horse up a hill, and then the saddle broke and it tipped me off the side. And I got a really severe injury throughout my pelvis. And I was told by the doctors, this is going to recover in a couple months. Don't worry about it. You'll be fine. So I was 13 and I just expected I would be fine. And then a couple months went by, there was still pain. And then it morphed into years and it started to move around my body. And I was getting really confused. Like, how could this one injury all of a sudden manifest in all this stuff around my body? And then in late high school, I got Epstein-Barr virus. And so not only did I have this chronic pain, but I also had this fatigue, which again, of course, I was told it would go away within a few months and it didn't. And so I was searching around, and as most people on this channel will absolutely understand, went to like every doctor under the sun and specialist to try and figure out what was going on, not really getting any answers until I found somebody who was able to diagnose me with CFS and fibromyalgia, which was a bit of a relief because it's nice to put a name on it. But then you start Googling it, and as you know, it's bleak out there. When you Google it, it really looks like there's no hope, and it really looks really scary. Thankfully, I've always been a nerd, like a super nerd for neuroscience. And so I was really interested in the brain, and I started to take courses in my school had amazing disability program. I was able to take some courses, and I learned about neuroplasticity. And that was just the most...
In high school?
Pardon?
In high school?
No, this is in university now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Still pretty young, but...
Totally. Yeah. So young adults, I was able to start taking some university classes and learn about neuroplasticity. And this is where the hope started. So I had this little glimmer of hope, like, oh, the brain's changeable, the nervous system's changeable. And I was learning how these were connected to that. And then that got me into reading about like polyvagal theory and understanding things like Unlearn Your Pain, Howard Schubiner, that kind of stuff. And that got me really excited. And then that led me down this path of healing and recovery. And I was able to make a full recovery. I don't meet the criteria for any of these conditions anymore. And now I work with people all around the world. I'm an occupational therapist, and I work with people all around the world to help them figure out recovery a little quicker than I did because I was able to, kind of learn how to do it more quickly.
Wow, that's so incredible that you tackled this. You took such ownership of your journey at such a young age, because having faced issues since 13, I would imagine it would be easy to just be like, this is my normal. This is kind of all I know. Like, who am
Hmm.
I to figure this out if the doctors can't figure it out? Like,
Totally. Yeah,
yeah.
totally. I mean, especially when that's what a lot of what you're hearing from other people is, oh, you just have to live with this. Oh, there's no cure. Oh, you just have to figure it out. Just what is the rest of your life going to look like? But I was like, no, there's no way that I'm just going to live with this. So, yeah, I'm really glad that I was turned on to those kinds of healing practices because, yeah, it shifted my life drastically.
So I know you talk about the importance of hope, and I suspect that was a part of what kept you going. So what was the role of hope for you in this, and how do you think it plays into, the journeys of all of us as we go through this?
Yeah, I think hope is honestly one of the most powerful things we can have. And that's why I love your channel because it inspires hope in people. Thank you for doing what you do and being here inspiring hope. We're kindred spirits in that way. I often, when I meet with clients, they're like, you're one of the most optimistic people I've met in this field. And I'm like, yeah, for good reason.
Oh,
You know, we're told there's a myth that's going around that these things are not recoverable. People are literally told this that, it's not recoverable or that there's a small chance of recovery. But if we look at the actual data and we look at the reasons why people aren't recovering, I know you interviewed recently Dr. David Clark, and he was saying, 1% of doctors are trained in this. So that
I think he
means
said less than 1%.
so less than 1%. That's
We're aiming for 1%. We'll get there. I don't think we're there yet.
That's wild. So of course,
I
of
know.
course, people aren't recovering, right? If healthcare providers aren't trained in this, and we don't understand that these conditions can impact every system in your body. They're not psychiatric, right? That's a thing that we run up against. People are like, "Oh, you're just depressed," or "Just take this SSRI," and it's like every system in your body is impacted by these conditions. And if we don't understand that, then how are we going to support recovery? So I don't know if you notice this too, but I noticed three things over the last 20 years of looking into this that really support recovery and actually make it possible. One is the nervous system stuff that I'm very excited to talk to you about today. Two is the brain retraining, because how we respond to our symptoms determines whether we're pouring fuel on the fire or we're putting the fire out. And then lifestyle factors like pacing and our diet, even supplements and medication and socialization, that kind of stuff. When we address those three pillars, people get better. People recover. And I don't want to say everyone can recover because there's a lot of different things in our society that make it hard. And there's a lot of external factors, marginalizations that make it difficult. But I have complete faith that every single person listening to this can gain function. Absolutely. Like, I believe that 110%.
Yes, and I think it's far too easy when 99% or more of doctors aren't up to speed on this, for the millions of people around the world facing these conditions to not really buy into this or to think of all these reasons why it doesn't apply to them. So my biggest hope always is just, I ask people, just stay open-minded. Even if this sounds bizarre to you, or it's a new way of thinking, or it doesn't fit, or if you're pushing back against it for 1,000 understandable reasons, it takes a while to get there. Just be curious. Just like keep that crack in the door open. Be like, okay, I'll listen.
Totally.
Because I think millions of people are writing this off where it could be helping them. Absolutely.
Yeah. The first time I ever read a book about this, I threw it across the room.
I hear that a lot.
Yeah.
Like specifically thrown books, lots of books being thrown.
Totally.
Sometimes at the person who gave it to them.
Yeah, I was like, this is garbage. This will never work, And yeah, it turns out that it can. It can work. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's almost, I don't want to say a good thing, but one thing that works for us is that we get so desperate. Like, I will do anything. I will just bring me your voodoo. I will try anything right now. And this kind of sounds like voodoo when you first hear about it. Thankfully,
Yes.
we've got doctors and researchers and, lots of scientific studies to back it up. And we know that it is firmly grounded in science. It's as scientific as surgery. But yeah, I think that desperation helps us out. That's the silver lining of going through these nightmares, is that like, all right.
Yeah,
sure.
absolutely. And you've seen it on your channel, hundreds of people that recover. I see it every day. Like, I hear recovery stories in my work every single day. We can read about it in studies. Like, there's no reason to think this isn't possible.
So we're talking a lot just in general these days about the nervous system and nervous system dysregulation, but I think it would be helpful to just talk about, what does that even mean? What is nervous system dysregulation?
Totally. It's helpful to define it because it's thrown around a lot. You'll see it on Instagram kind of everywhere. I'm going to explain this to you like you don't know. I'm sure you know, but I'm going to explain it to you like you don't. So to understand nervous system dysregulation, we first just have to understand the nervous system. So the nervous system consists of our central nervous system, which is our brain and spinal cord, and then our peripheral nervous system, which carries information to and from the brain and spinal cord. When we're talking about dysregulation, we're often talking about the peripheral nervous system, specifically the autonomic nervous system, which, as the name suggests, is automatic. It controls everything automatic in our body. So like our heart rate, our digestion, our sweating, pupil dilation, that kind of stuff. This part of our nervous system also controls our survival responses, which is very helpful because if there was a lion in front of us right now, we don't want to have to think about, I'm going to shunt my blood into my legs and I'm going to make my heart go faster and all that stuff. It just happens quickly, right? So what we have is the stress cycle, or the stress response cycle. So we encounter a lion, we engage a survival response, and then once we're safe again, we discharge the energy by laughing, by crying, by screaming, by hugging someone, and then we come back into regulation. So that's the stress cycle. And we have 5 options when we go into our survival responses. So most people are familiar with fight, flight, and freeze, but there's 2 more, which aren't as talked about. The fawn response, we can give the lion something it wants. Flight, we can run away. Fight, we can fight the lion. Freeze is that wired and tired kind of feeling. You're a deer in the headlights. And then we have faint. So lion comes, we engage one of our responses. Let's say we choose to run away and we go somewhere that's safe. We're locked in somewhere safe, discharge the energy, we're shaking it out, we're crying it out, we're letting out a scream, we come back to regulation. So dysregulation is when we get stuck. Dysregulation is when we have a survival response, but there's no threat present. So that means that your nervous system isn't as flexible as we need it to be. So typically a healthy nervous system would kind of move into stress and then come back into regulation. We move into stress, come back into regulation. But when our nervous system's stuck, that's when we start to think about that word of dysregulation, and that can cause all kinds of emotional and physical symptoms when it stays like that for a long time.
Yeah, I love when you said, I'm going to tell it to you like you don't know. And I was thinking, guaranteed, I'm going to learn something from your explanation, because everybody teaches me something. And you're the first person I've had who talks about that, discharge of energy, which makes perfect sense.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, an important part of the whole process. So, okay, so we understand this. We have this great system that keeps us alive.
Mm-hmm.
How did it give me long COVID?
Great question. Yeah, so this connection is like an aha moment for so many of my clients. It's nice to see the light bulb go off in their eyes when I explain this. So long COVID, or ME/CFS, is caused by an initiating factor, right? So you're going to have something that's overwhelmed your nervous system that causes long COVID or ME/CFS. In COVID's, it's COVID. In ME/CFS, sometimes it's a virus, sometimes it's an extreme stress, sometimes it's an accident or something like that. But there's something that has caused the nervous system to sort of tip over the edge. And what's happening there is your stress cycle is not able to complete because your nervous system is so activated by this virus or whatever the initiating factor is. And typically, if people have a history of stress or trauma, then their nervous system's already up here. And then this virus or whatever, we're just adding a little bit extra. It's going over the edge. And then we can't get back. It's kind of hard to put everything back in, right? So we're stuck in survival responses. This helps to make sense of the rest of the symptoms that start to happen with these conditions. Because when the nervous system's dysregulated, this system is affecting every other system in the body. So your nervous system's communicating to your mitochondria. It's saying, hey, we're in danger. And the mitochondria literally start to shut down. They don't produce as much energy because they're going into the cell danger response. It communicates to your histamine system. So sometimes people can have weird histamine responses. Communicates to your respiratory system, your cardiovascular system, POTS, right? It communicates to your digestive system. So this is how it's so physical, right? Because the nervous system's going, we're in danger. And then the rest of the body is responding as if you are responding to a threat, right? But the really important thing to understand here is that this is not damage. It's dysfunction. So you're stuck in some combination of fawn, fight, flight, freeze, or faint. And when we think about the debilitating, like horrible bone-crushing fatigue, that is the faint response. So when we make that connection, people go, oh my gosh, I'm not broken. I literally just have a dysfunction. And that dysfunction is part of a neuroplastic system that is changeable, is workable.
Yeah, that's such an important thing you point out, because this is where it understandably gets so confusing for those of us going through it. It's like, but I have very real physical symptoms that are happening, measurable things in my body. And it's that understanding how symptoms are created, and your brain and nervous system can create any and every system, like symptom in your body, and it can create changes, and it can create pain, and decrease oxygen to muscles, and just different things. Change your heart rate, change your blood flow.
Totally.
Just do all sorts of things. So yeah, it doesn't make any of it any less real. It's just looking at the source of why your brain and nervous system think it needs to send these signals.
Yeah. And at one point it had a very, very real reason. It was trying to protect the system. And now, likely, most of us are out of that threat. So there's just a misunderstanding between your brain and your body and how much protection you need. But like you said, these are very real physical symptoms, which is why it's frustrating when a doctor says, oh, it's all in your head, or it's psychiatric, because it's like, no, literally your mitochondria are functioning differently because the nervous system's communicating this. But if the nervous system can communicate safety, then all of these functions turn back into their normal functioning because we're safe. We don't have to protect the system anymore.
Yeah, and the unfortunate thing that we see happen time and time again, I'm sure you see it all the time, is that so now this is manifested as ME/CFS or long COVID or whatever title we've given it. And then that, for me, that became the person chasing me with a gun. That was the scariest thing in my life, was having ME/CFS. So I was in a panic now 24 hours a day and didn't even know I had a nervous system. So you just get stuck in years of this symptom spiral that is virtually impossible to get out of until you start approaching it from this way.
Absolutely. Yeah, it becomes so scary. And then also, now that there's more talk about it, there's some people out there that I hear that are like, oh, careful with your symptoms. Don't push yourself too far. That's how people end up bedbound. And then that becomes even more scary for the nervous system. We have to balance. We have to pace. We don't want to, if someone's terrified of swimming, I'm not going to push them into the deep end and be like, figure it out,
Yeah.
But also, we can't be terrified of swimming altogether, or we're never going to get back to it. You know what I mean? So we have to find that balance, which is where the pacing comes in. Yeah.
Okay. So we're going to dive into some specific nervous system regulation strategies, but you bring up pacing, and I'd really love to hear how it is that how that is incorporated into recovery, with the people that you work with, because it's a controversial thing and people have many different definitions of what pacing means. So if you could talk about that, that would be great.
Yes, absolutely. This is one of the things I get the most questions about. There's so many different ways to do it, right? There's points, there's spoons, there's apps you can use, all this stuff. I like to simplify it for my clients. I like to literally think about red zone, green zone, yellow zone. So red zone in pacing, in my terms, is like PEM or a migraine or a panic attack. It's something that really elevates your symptoms. Your nervous system's very dysregulated and it's hard to come back from, like more than a couple hours, usually a couple days. Yellow is where you're like, you get a little bit of symptoms, but not too much. And you can come back to it. You can use some regulation skills to bring your nervous system back down. And then green is your baseline, which often isn't zero, but it's like someone's baseline. Now, the problem, what happens is that people either go boom and bust. They go, 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 go. They push into the red and then they have to suffer for that for a long time. Or they live in the green. They're not challenging their symptoms because they're scared to. So we want to find a balance where we're moving into the yellow on the regular and challenging the system a little bit, but not so much that we're moving into the red. Also, not to be scared of the red. We can't be scared of it. If you go into the red and then you panic and, oh no, I've caused damage and this is worse, and you're literally just revving up the system more. So even if you go into the red, it's kind of like an experiment. You're just like, I wonder what I did, what two chemicals I put together that made that spark, and how can I maybe next time do a little less or adapt it a little differently so that I go into the yellow instead of the red. And when we hone in on that and get that really good, people see changes so quickly. I've seen people go from bedbound to like riding a bike in a couple months just by focusing on that. And the nervous system regulation to when you do go into the red, you're responding with nervous system regulation.
Yeah, I love how you explain that about staying in the green. I've never heard it put that way. And you're right. There's so many components to this, the messages of safety and understanding the nervous system and how the brain works and neuroplasticity. But if you're never really balancing out your boundaries and slowly expanding activity, that you're losing all your chances. You need those opportunities to show your brain and your nervous system that these things are safe.
Yeah, corrective experiences, right? Doing something, showing the nervous system. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, people live with understandably, a lot of fear around trying new activities or doing things they haven't done in a while. And I've heard so many people that I've interviewed that have talked about, like, I get stuck in this stress spiral about this upcoming dentist appointment or something that's coming. Mm-hmm. And I canceled it 8 times. And the dentist specifically, I mean, I don't like going to the dentist when I feel fine. So I get it. When you're not feeling well, that's just not a fun experience. Mm-hmm. But then when you think about it, you need this experience to make it okay. Mm-hmm. Either you're going to go and you're going to get symptoms, and that's going to be your chance to, send your nervous system those messages of safety, and it's going to be okay, or you'll go and you'll feel fine, but either way, it's going to be okay. Yeah. But it's easy to get stuck in that place of being afraid of everything in life and not realizing that, you're not going to want to go out and run a marathon tomorrow, but you have to slowly expand out and be okay with just, if someone had said this to me, I might have punched them, but even just be grateful for sometimes, because you're like, okay, this means I tried something. Like I pushed myself outside of my boundaries a little bit, and I'm working on it. And now here they are, and here's my chance to rewire things.
It's a bit like an opportunity. It's an opportunity when we have a symptom to use our skills to work with that symptom and to see if we can use that moment to rewire the brain to respond to our symptoms differently, right? So when you have symptoms, it's like, oh, I can practice my skills, which again, I agree with you. I probably would have been very upset if someone said that to me in the beginning before I understood all this stuff. But yeah, I'm really grateful for my lens as an occupational therapist, because I feel like I can really think about adapting activities because I use the fear example a lot. Like if someone was terrified of balloons, we're not going to stick them in a room full of balloons. That would be awful. Yeah. But we might show them like a picture of a balloon and then regulate the nervous system, and then a video of a balloon, regulate the nervous system. So we want to pare down people's activities as much as we can to whatever your nervous system can handle, and then create a sense of calm, like to cushion that activity.
Yeah. So I know you have some really great, specific things to do to work with your nervous system. So what are some of the strategies that you use working with patients and clients?
I'm so excited to get into this with you. I love this. This is the meat and potatoes of today.
I love that you're excited. This is just the meat and potatoes of my life.
Yeah, totally.
This all day. Let's just geek out over nervous system regulation strategies.
Yeah. When I said I was a nerd, I meant it.
This is my favorite thing to learn about in life. Yeah. So I'm on the edge of my seat. I'm excited to learn something new.
Yeah. So the goal of nervous system regulation is to help our nervous system feel safe. And sometimes I say this to clients and they're like, what are you talking about? I already feel safe. I know I'm safe. What do you mean? It's to subconsciously feel safe. So your amygdala is responsible, your fear center is responsible for getting you into fight or flight. And we want to be able to show and tell the nervous system that we're safe. So we tell the nervous system with some brain retraining type stuff like somatic tracking. I know that you just did a video on that, which I love. Somatic tracking is amazing. We're not going to get into that fully today, but I've got a meditation for that on my channel that people can check out if they want. It's a really cool tool to tell the nervous system. Basically, we're saying, I am safe enough. Those 4 words can radically shift things for people. Like, I am safe enough. We're trying to help the nervous system, the amygdala, understand there's no threat here. There is no threat present in your body. There's no threat present in the room. You're safe enough. And I used to say just flat out, like, I am safe. And that's not, the brain has some resistance against it. I listened to something with Deb Dana and she said she put the enough in there. And I was like, oh, that makes it sound so much more easy for your nervous system to understand. I am safe enough because we never know what could happen, but right now we are safe enough. Yeah. So that's a little bit of the tell the nervous system. And there's a lot more brain retraining stuff we could get into for the tell part, but I want to tell you about the show part. How do we somatically show the nervous system that we're safe? How do we prove to the nervous system through the body? So soma means body in Greek. How do we prove to the nervous system that we're safe? Before I give the skills, I know everyone's like, just give me the skills already. I want to say more than what you do, how you do it is important. So you could do skills for 10 hours a day. And I promise you, when I was sick, I did. I literally probably spent 20 to 30 hours a week researching, listening to audiobooks, like trying to figure out how to fix myself. It's not about what you do, how you do it. So we don't want to force, we don't want to fix, we don't want to try to, knock on the shell of a turtle and get it to come out. That's not going to work. We have to invite the nervous system into safety, not demand it into safety. So everything that we're doing, we do it because we care about ourselves, because we love ourselves, which can be hard for some people. We're doing it with an air of compassion and care rather than I'm just going to do this and it's going to make my symptoms go away, So that's really important. And having fun with it. Fun and laughter are kind of robbed from us with chronic conditions. Mm-hmm. And the more that we can add little moments of a silly little video of a cat or something like that to your day to give yourself a little bit more endorphins, that's going to shift your nervous system to, oh, my recovery isn't just a full-time job. I'm doing things that I enjoy and that are fun for me. So those are the things that I want to say before even introducing a skill. But now let's get into the skills. So the first thing that I'm going to teach you is an acronym that I made up for breathing. And I know that breathing is a bit of an eye roll thing where people are like, okay, here's another practitioner telling me I need to breathe. But we breathe 22,000 times a day, according to the Canadian Lung Association. That's a lot of times. So if we're doing it in a way that's not supportive for our nervous system, that's 22,000 opportunities to either regulate or dysregulate, right? So the acronym that I came up with is SEND. So the S is for slow and soft. So it's more like send, I guess, but it's slow and soft. So we want to slow the breathing down. A regulated nervous system when we're super relaxed is 4 to 6 breaths per minute, which is pretty slow. And
wow.
Yeah, pretty slow. Yeah.
Wow.
So we can pause at the top or we can pause at the bottom to allow it to become a little bit more slow. We also want to do it softly because sometimes I tell clients, yeah, take a nice deep breath. And they go, and I'm like, whoa, let's just soften it, right? We're communicating safety. We're doing things we wouldn't do if there was a lion in front of us. So it's slow, it's soft. The E is for exhale. You want your exhale to be twice as long as your inhale, at least. This will stimulate the parasympathetic nervous system because it slows your heart rate down. It's especially good for those with POTS as part of their condition with ME/CFS. So it's slow, it's soft. The exhale is longer than the inhale. And then we want to breathe in through the nose. That's the N. So when we breathe in through the nose, it produces nitric oxide. And nitric oxide actually boosts your immune system. So we want...
What?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah, we have an immune system booster simply by breathing through our nose, which is pretty cool. And
fascinating.
I know, right? Yeah, and it filters the air. It does all kinds of great stuff. And also, if you think about it, like if you're in danger, what would you do if you're like scared? You probably go, right?
Yeah.
So when we breathe through the nose, we're saying we're safe in the body's language, basically. Then the diaphragm. So we've all probably heard about diaphragmatic breathing. Diaphragm's connected to your ventral vagus nerve, which is, what helps us to regulate more. So by pumping the diaphragm, we're stimulating the nerve a bit. And then we're also able to breathe from our bellies instead of our apex up here at the top of our lungs. And if we are breathing from the top of our lungs, we're heaving up the air with our shoulders. And this means that the traps and the sternocleidomastoids and these big muscles in this area are doing 22,000 reps of an activity that they're not designed to do. So that not only causes headaches and pain, but it's exhausting. It can contribute to your fatigue, especially if your mitochondria aren't functioning super well in your muscles, and then you're asking your muscles to do more than they're meant to do. That can cause a lot of fatigue. So sometimes just switching to belly breath, diaphragmatic breathing, can make a big difference. So if we practice this type of breathing, even just for a week, we can shift our immune system and our nervous system and lower cortisol and all kinds of things. So it's a really good thing to think about just as a baseline kind of skill.
I really love this. And Sasend, it's going to stick with me and it's perfect. And I feel myself doing it as you're explaining it, and I can feel myself starting to feel better. But then I think, okay, that was 5 breaths. I did well. What about the other 21,900 and however many? So how often in a day do you need to be breathing like this for it to be effective or to be helpful?
Yeah, so I would just try to think about it as often as you can. So it's helpful to have like a little reminder on your phone or maybe a sticky note. I know my clients' houses are just filled with sticky notes, a little sticky note that reminds you, because we're training. And the diaphragm's a muscle, so the more that you train it to breathe this way, the more it will just automatically start to breathe this way. So it's sort of just like introducing a new thought with brain retraining, right? It's kind of like the more we think it, the more it'll become that pathway in the brain, and then it's just easier to go down.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, because I think of breathing as something, it is, that mostly happens outside of our conscious awareness. So sometimes it can feel too big to change, to have an impact. But
totally,
right, you're building new pathways in the brain, new automations. And I even find myself, I might not be doing it throughout the day, but I've done it enough that if I'm in a stressful meeting for work or a situation, I know to take charge of my breath and just and it goes a really long way. It really does.
Yeah, absolutely. And we were just talking about the benefits of nitric oxide. Another way to increase that and also to vibrate your ventral vagus nerve through your throat, so through your vocal cords, is to hum. So humming increases nitric oxide too, and it also will stimulate that vagus nerve, putting you into the parasympathetic state. So humming, or Stephen Porges Vooing, which is just a voo, holding that. Those things, chanting, that kind of stuff can easily regulate the system as well.
So having these sorts of tools in the moment to regulate your nervous system, is this enough to get your nervous system out of this chronic fight or flight and have long COVID or whatever it is turned into go away? Or is there something deeper that you need to get at? What does that bigger picture look like?
That's such a good question. Yeah. So I like to give my clients daily skills. So skills that you do anywhere from 10 minutes to an hour, maybe even 2 hours a day. We've got, an hour in the morning, hour at night, maybe, depending on the client. Some there's just like 5 minutes in the morning, 5 at night. So we've got daily skills, which start to rewire your nervous system towards safety. Then we've got reactionary skills. Those are the skills that you use when you're starting to feel that activation coming up in the body and you can bring it back down. And then we've got weekly skills. So those are things like maybe yoga or something that you might do a little less frequently. And I find that when people are doing this regularly, then their nervous system is starting to shift, it's starting to change. Now, if people are doing this for a while and they're not really seeing results, there might be something under the hood that we have to take a look at. So we might need to take a look at, what's happening with some of the brain retraining type stuff, like what are some of your core beliefs that might be fueling things that are happening. Or a lot of my clients also have a history of trauma. Again, trauma doesn't cause these disorders, but a lot of people do have a history of trauma, which is sort of like primed their nervous system to be more dysregulated. So we might need to look at what we can do for trauma. I like to work with internal family systems. I like to work with clinical hypnotherapy for trauma. And there's therapeutic writing or journal speak is another great trauma processing tool. But sometimes we do need to uncover some of that stuff so that someone can make progress with these tools.
I've had a lot of people bring up internal family systems in interviews, but it's not something here on the channel we've ever talked about or really addressed what it is. So I'm sure we can't, get into the whole comprehensive picture. But for people that are like, okay, I keep hearing this.
Yeah.
What is that?
I bet you could get Dr. Schwartz to come on. I know he does a bunch of podcasts. But yes, internal family systems is basically it's a parts work. So understanding that within all of us, we have parts. And some of our parts try to protect the system through being a manager, meaning that they kind of swoop in and they control things, or perfectionist parts, or angry parts, or things that kind of try to fix and control the system, and firefighters, which try to like numb the system out with various like substances or distractions. And when we start to, and then there's exiles, which are like the hidden parts of us from when we're very young that can be deeply hurt. And so when we start to relate to these different parts, we're able to kind of talk to and let the parts know that self energy, which is different than the parts, that's always there. It's kind of this curious, compassionate, confident self. There's 8 C's. Don't ask me all of them. There's this self energy that can then relate to the parts, almost like, a good enough parent being there, being able to help manage the household, manage the family. You're relating to the parts and letting them know that maybe this burden they've carried for so long of perfectionism that started when they were 5 years old, that 5-year-old doesn't have to carry that burden anymore because self is here. So we're starting to introduce this relationship between parts and self, maybe even have a conversation between parts. It all sounds a bit funky if people haven't heard of this before, but it's a profound therapy, and a lot of people find it really useful.
Yeah, that sounds absolutely incredible. Definitely something we need to be talking about more here on the channel. What I would have done, Zara, to have had you in my life when I was facing CFS, or I think of my mother. It's absolutely incredible the work that you're doing, and then you've been through it yourself. You get it. So for people listening or watching, what resources do you have? Like, how could people get support from you if that's something that they were looking for?
Yeah, so I have a ton of resources available for people. Accessibility is really, really important to me. So I've kept things low, like there's options from free to low cost to, working with me one-on-one for typical kind of therapist prices. All of that's available on my website. I have a YouTube channel as well where there's free meditations, that somatic tracking that we were talking about. Got a course, I've got a book, and there's always the opportunity to work with me. I work around the world with one-on-one sessions.
Absolutely incredible. And all of this will be linked, of course, in the description. So people watching, listening, do yourself a favor and just take a moment and go click on one of those, because I can tell you she knows her stuff. You're clearly an amazing person. And I have no doubt you're going to have a lot of people reaching out to you, because I know I absolutely would have.
Oh, thank you so much.
So I love that you're giving people practical tools to use right now. So it would be so amazing, because I know you've got a lot, if we could just give people a couple more things right now that they can consider starting to use, today.
Yes, absolutely. Do you want to try some with me?
I would love nothing more. Yes.
Okay, great. We're going to do something called the basic exercise. So You're going to put your hands together like this. Yeah. And then behind your head. Does that feel comfortable for you?
Yes.
Okay, great. So with our hands like this behind our head, we're going to look to the left as far as you can comfortably without straining your eyes or moving your head or neck. And you can take a nice big inhale. Think about that send breath. And exhale. We're just going to hold for a little minute here. And typically we would hold this for 1 to 2 minutes, but now let's switch to the right. Nice deep breath. Long exhale. Good. Okay. Did you notice anything from that short little?
My overwhelming desire to want to look at the screen and see your face.
Yeah,
I don't feel like this is the most natural situation to be doing this.
Totally. You can release the exercise.
Okay. Yeah, I felt myself relaxing. I found it challenging to push out each direction and hold my gaze there, but overall it felt like a calming. What were we doing there?
Yeah, so this position, I call it kind of like the beach position, beach posture. You kind of do this when you're hanging out, when you're relaxed. And think about it. There's a lion in front of me. I'm not doing this because a lion could swipe my internal organs, right? This is way not safe enough. So when we're feeling not safe, we crunch in, we hunch, we turtle. And so this is communicating to the body, hey, I'm safe. Also, when we're not safe or when we're in a survival situation, our eyes tense. This happens unconsciously. It's the first thing that happens for most of us. We don't even realize it. Like for those of you listening, if you even just put your hands on your eyes, you'll be surprised how tight these muscles can get when we're dysregulated. So that exercise is a quick way to stretch out your eye muscles. So you're letting those muscles get a little bit of stretch and relief. You're not directly staring at a threat, right? Again, if a threat was right here, I'm not doing this, right? Yeah. So we're just communicating various levels of safety. The vagus nerve also connects to the eyes. So when we stretch out the eyes, we're able to communicate safety. And if this is not comfortable for people, some of my clients get dizzy and stuff, you can literally just warm up your hands and hold them over the eyes. And that can feel really, really nice, especially if you're looking at a computer or a screen for a lot of the day. And that relief says there's no danger in my environment because my eyes are relaxing, right? Yeah. We wouldn't be doing that if there was something dangerous.
I love this. It's sort of hacking the system. It's like, okay, instead of trying to think my way through this or convince my nervous system, it's just like, let's just show it.
Exactly.
Let's do all the things we do when we're relaxed. That's brilliant.
Yeah. Think of anything you would do if a lion was not in front of you. That's probably a nervous system regulation skill. And then the visualization. So we do this in brain retraining, but our minds are incredibly powerful with visualization. Like, they did a study, I wonder if you've heard this study before, it's so cool, where they had people working out their biceps for 3 weeks, and they did it for 15 minutes a day. And they had another group of people who were visualizing working out their biceps. So the group that worked out their biceps, they gained 30% muscle strength. They had a control group that did nothing, and they didn't gain any strength at all. But the group that visualized building their muscles, like, this is wild, 13.5% gain in strength in their muscles from visualizing. Yeah, right. This is wild.
Now I'm thinking, like, at the end of a busy day, I'm like, I don't need to go to the gym. I just need to think about going to the gym.
Totally. I had to wake up in the morning and just imagine the six pack, and we're going to get there. But this is so cool for people with ME/CFS because
incredible.
A lot of them are bed bound, right?
Yeah.
That means that, from your bed, you can literally gain strength. And if we pair visualization with clinical hypnotherapy, it's even more profound because in a hypnotic state, you're in a theta state, which means that your brain waves are a little slower and your brain is more plastic. And so clinical hypnotherapy can be a really cool skill for people with these conditions.
Amazing. Mm-hmm. Oh my goodness. I love this so much.
And the last skill that I'll teach you today is the butterfly hug. So we cross our hands across our chest like this and give a little squeeze, and then you just tap left and right. It's a pretty easy skill. And we can use the send breath while we're doing this. Take nice deep breaths into the belly, long exhales. What we're doing here is the exact same thing as EMDR. So eye movement desensitization reprocessing therapy. Your eyes move left and right, left and right. We're bilaterally stimulating the brain. So when we stimulate the brain, left brain, right brain, for some reason, we don't know exactly why, it soothes the amygdala, calms it right down. So
wow.
Bilateral stimulation via tapping, via looking left and right, or even 8D music. Have you listened to 8D music?
No, I don't think so.
So cool. 8D music is audio programmed to move from your left ear to your right ear to your left ear to your right ear. So you get this really interesting effect. It kind of sounds like the music is moving around the room, and it's super regulating. Careful when you look up 8D music because sometimes it's for like entertainment, and there's 8D music that is like fast-paced EDM type stuff. But if you look up 8D relaxing, that can be profoundly relaxing for the system.
Oh, this is so incredible. I can't believe how many concrete, amazing tools that you've shared. And I learned so much, from talking to you. So I learned so much from everyone I interview. It's such a gift being able to do this. You talked about the importance of hope too. So I'm going to link here. I have a full recovery playlist. So if people, need that hope, you need some hope on tap, there are like couple hundred there. You don't have to watch them all, but just skim, find something. And people say they bookmark their favorites. And on those extra challenging days, it just becomes like a friend that kind of walks you through the day.
Yes.
Sarah, thank you for doing this. Really appreciate you having you here, having a chance to meet you. I hope to have you back on the channel someday. This is absolutely incredible.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been such an honor and a pleasure.
Oh, amazing. Thanks to all of you watching. I'm looking forward to your comments and hearing what you think, and hope to see you in one of these next recovery stories.